Good afternoon from Vietnam. Good afternoon to you, Jonathan. Thanks a lot for spending your late afternoon to join our program to share your amazing journey to our global audience. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you, Dr. Jonathan.
Thank you very much. I'm touched to be on your show. Thank you for having me.
And since a couple of years already, you haven't been to my country, and we're very close to one another. So if you decide to travel to Vietnam for leisure or work, make sure that you put an hour or so on your agenda so that we can meet in person for a cup of tea or coffee together. That would be lovely.
I would love that. That would be perfect. Are you still in Da Nang or where are you?
I'm in Ho Chi Minh City.
What you mean? Got it.
Yes, and we travel to Singapore quite often also. So if we travel next trip to Singapore, I'll let you know in advance, and maybe we can have a cup of coffee there also. Okay?
I'd love that. That would be perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And for a little taste of our culture here, Jonathan, it's very honored if we can have you to share to our audience about who you are and the work you do. Would you please do that honor first?
Oh, I'm a psychologist and also an executive coach. And I'm third generation Singaporean, which I know surprises particularly Singaporeans, as not many Singaporeans are this fair. But I grew up in Singapore, lived in Europe and in the United States, and then came back to Singapore, where I've been on faculty at two of the universities here, and now run my own executive coaching, psychotherapy, and leadership training practice.
You have an amazing journey of building, of having leaders, of teaching, and, students, of doing a lot of amazing things that you introduced to us in less than 1 minute. And I told you earlier of this conversation, that is, it is not fair for our audience. So we're gonna dive in deeper to know what you do in this kind of works, and how does time travel sound to you?
Sounds exciting. Sounds lovely. Something that I do a lot in my one-on-one work.
Oh, really? So this time we will do it with you, okay? And I'll lead the
Excellent.
way. When I was born in Da Nang city, like you know, so when I grew up, our city very poor, and I was born in a very poor family also. And in my community, one night we had electricity, the next night we did not have electricity at all. So my my dream at young age is I would like to become an astronaut and fly into the moon because it's beautiful when those dark nights and you saw the moon rise, right? So, but life took me to a very different directions, except in this journey of interviewing experts. I've been interviewing a lot of astronauts around the world, and I interviewed one of the 12 men who ever walked on the moon himself also. So for Jonathan, for Dr. Jonathan, what was your first dream about the work that you are going to do in this world when you were young?
You know, I spend a lot of time helping people dream about their futures and trying to help them achieve it. And the irony is, it's very hard for me to do that dreaming myself. So even as a child, when other kids wanted to be policemen and firemen and astronauts and all of that, I never really could do that. And even now, when I think 5 years from now, what is it that I want? It's it's just a haze. So I'm very glad that things have worked out as well as they have, but there's never been a plan. There's never been a target of I want to have a doctorate. In fact, I would never have guessed I would have had a doctorate. There's never been I want to be an executive coach or a psychologist, maybe a psychologist, but if I'd ever had a dream, I think I wanted to be like a shaman in a way, like an urban shaman. I wanted to know about the mysteries of the mystical world. Maybe as a kid, that would have been my dream.
What
And
is
in
that?
some
The
ways,
urban what?
like a shaman, like a medicine man. Uh, Somebody who understands the mystical realm. Somebody who, yes, because I think I was always interested in the mystical. Um,
Mm.
and in some ways, without thinking about it, that is in some ways what my job is, in terms of it's healing verbally rather than through allopathic medicine, and it's helping people try and perform. And along the way, I do some sort of unusual things, like for example, I use clinical hypnosis, um, meditation, other means of non-allopathic means for trying to help people heal where they need to heal, but also, and I'm thinking of psychological healing, as well as perform. So how do you help an MMA fighter get a title belt? How do you help a senior executive get onto the C-suite? How do you help someone get onto an Olympic team? So both in terms of the healing realm and in terms of the performance realm. So that's sort of the path. But maybe there was a little bit of a dream, but it was never clear. And certainly I never thought I would be there.
I'm just curious to know because as kids, right, we have dreams about the future of what we want to be. Was there any reason that Jonathan at young age did not have that clear picture of the future he wants to become, or anything?
No idea. No idea. Yeah, no idea. And to be honest, I mean, I've had so many midlife crises. I think my first midlife crisis was probably around age 12. And I've had so many since that I think by the time I actually chose the path of a psychologist, maybe I got them out of the way, and I help a lot of other people with their midlife crises of helping them work out what's my sense of purpose, passion, and direction. That these are things that have been very hard for me to find. And so perhaps part of the reason why people are drawn to working with me in order to help them find a sense of purpose and direction.
So that, something happened at age 12 that made you to want to become a psychologist, to help yourself first so that you can help other people also?
I think what happened then was a sense of, is life meaningful or is it meaningless? This was genuinely a big question for me. So in some ways quite a spiritual question. And I thought, for me, not for everybody, life needs to have meaning. It needs to have. So I think for many people it didn't. It's about money. It's about prestige. It's about learning to get on the football team. And I had all of that too. But the calling for meaning, I think, was important. But I never, although I did consider becoming a monk at some stage, that never felt like the right calling. I felt like I wanted to be in the urban world as opposed to something more monastic.
If you don't mind, I would love to ask you about what happened back then, because that meta question is huge for a kid at 12 years old, right? And at 12 years old, I can imagine myself, going to the beach and then enjoy football with my friends, playing games and reading a lot of, comic books, right? And Dr. Jonathan back then already asked a huge question for himself and even for adults today. That huge question is not easy for a lot of people to face or to ask themselves. So it's very, 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 brave of you and courageous of you to ask those kind of questions. So what happened?
I suspect I was always a bit that way. Even much younger, there was always a sense of the mystical meaning, purpose that was always there. I suspect around age 12, there was compounded by the fact that I was in boarding school and I didn't particularly like it. I find now in my practice that my clients who are striving for meaning are also the ones who tend to be unhappy. And that when those same people become happy, that importance of meaning goes down. What stays is the desire to be engaged. I want to be engaged in something. But the idea for purpose and meaning, I think it becomes highlighted when we're not happy, when we're not engaged in a positive way. And so maybe at that time, there was a sense of isolation that I experienced in boarding school that may have encouraged this line of thinking.
Was there anybody that you could communicate your feelings with, or you share your feeling with back then?
Yes. And also, I think in boarding school, where I was, you're kind of on your own. There was an element of you're surrounded by people all the time, and you're on your own.
Wow.
So I think, like, in terms of getting a moment alone, very rare. But getting a moment of, describing deeper thoughts with someone, also quite rare in that particular environment.
And then by the time that you go for pursue for higher education, or maybe that is a starting point for you to go into a career later on, you could choose to do anything. You know, why did you decide to go for psychology?
I was planning to do engineering. I wanted to do engineering for like low tech, humanitarian oriented projects. You know, hydroelectric power schemes, but you know, not the Aswan Dam, but little things in places that other people didn't want to go. So that was kind of where meaning was taking me, was to do more tangible, real world help. I then did 2.5 years of obligatory service for the Singapore Armed Forces. All Singaporean males have to do this. And I think I was sort of done with engineering. I was a naval officer. It just really didn't have that much appeal to do more math and physics. You know, I thought that was where I was still going to go. But I ended up at a university where I could choose whatever topics I wanted. I took one engineering class in my whole time at university, and I liked psychology, and I liked the fact that my best friend was in psychology. And if you study psychology, you've got a conversation, like you've got so many conversations to have. If you study engineering at lunchtime, how are you going to talk to that girl I want to chat up? You know, if I'm studying engineering, I guess that's not so easy. I was never very successful with the ladies at that point, so it didn't really make a difference, but I'm sure that was there somewhere. So no, psychology was my second academic love. My first academic love was anthropology. I thought cultural anthropology I thought was fascinating. But when it came to choosing a degree, I thought there are a few things more useless than psychology, but one of them is surely cultural anthropology. Like, I just couldn't see a career in cultural anthropology. That's a very hard path. I know that sounds harsh, but so I thought, well, maybe psychology is a little bit more employable. Maybe one day I'll do a further degree in psychology, but I didn't really think so. And then as I went down the psychology route, I fell more and more interested into the mind-body connection. What is hypnosis? What are trance states? How can you help someone improve their state of mind, cure their depression, help them heal, help them perform? How do people walk on hot coals without getting burned? You know, what is it that happens in the mind that allows us to do remarkable things? And so that became an interest. And I was very fortunate that my university had a lab where that was a big part of their focus. So I got to study it at a really great lab with a fabulous professor who influenced me for both of my degrees.
Wow. I'm curious to ask, was that something that you developed the love for during the path of growing, or maybe that is something that inside of your family DNA is already there and you just evolve with that?
I think my parents were very focused on meaning. That for them, human rights. My mother was a medical social worker, and in her 20s left London to go to Malaya, and was a Red Cross woman driving a white Jeep in the communist-infested jungles of Malaya. I mean, it was scary and dangerous and crazy. Like, you know, it was a crazy thing to do, but she believed in what she was doing when she started. I'm not sure she did by the time she ended. My father was very interested in human rights, both as a lawyer and as a politician. And so I think that was sort of in the air of my family.
Wow. Now you explain a lot more for us to understand, you know, why you always been in the midst of looking for meanings and trying to make something bigger for yourself and then for other people also, right? So you studied your bachelor for psychology in Stanford, right?
Yeah. A bachelor's and also a doctorate. Yeah.
Yes. Why invest more time into, you know, the PhD program?
Yeah, maybe because I didn't know what else to do. Um, I think at the end of a bachelor's in psychology, I was like, this really doesn't qualify me for very much. Um, you know, you're left with like, okay, I know a few cool things, but I am not qualified to apply anything. And was very interested in this mind-body research. It was the time when the mind-body connection was beginning to get quite a bit of traction, and I was very impressed with it. And so it seemed like a great idea if I could get into Stanford. So Stanford didn't accept its undergraduates, so I went to another school in San Diego for a year, and then I had the option of applying to Stanford, and I was lucky to get in. And so got to kind of go back to my old lab and do the research that I really enjoyed. And I was looking at, can you treat or cure depression with meditation and yoga or hypnosis, or you know what non-pharmacological, non-standard ways are available. And so spent quite a bit of time looking at applying these things in a clinical context.
So that is the first time that you really enjoy something that you think that you can use for the future about the mind, the body research. Do I understand it correctly?
That was important. It was very concrete. It was sort of taking these kind of fuzzy things and putting hard numbers on them, putting them through, you know, Stanford psychiatry department level of scrutiny. And that was great. So now, whatever, there are more than 1,500 studies on using meditation for depression. But the study that we did, I think, was the first empirically validated study of its kind. So it was the first time using these kind of methods to examine, can depression improve depression? Can meditation improve depression? So it was exhausting to kind of go through that level of scrutiny and try to think about how can you bring these worlds together, the world of Eastern self-development with Western science. But it was very exciting.
And then tell us, you know, like because you've been spent years at university teaching and got a lot of warrant for as the you know, like what made you move from a profession of teaching on to doing business consulting later on in life?
Yeah, so I'd been on faculty at National University of Singapore. Before that, I helped set up the psychology division at the Nanyang Technological University. And I'd never been interested in doing a ton of research. It was always there. I was one very big project. I was asked to look at how does Singapore view Lee Kuan Yew. So Lee Kuan Yew was regarded as the primary modern founder of Singapore. And so it was like the biography of Lee Kuan Yew by Singaporeans. So it was a very big, challenging study. And I kind of, when I was done with that, I'm like, okay, I love teaching. I love working with students. I love the development side of being a professor. I don't really want to spend time doing lots of research, just not what I wanted. And so at that point in my career, it's either you go for tenure and become a tenured professor for which research is necessary, or you go the teaching track. And I had a couple of options, and I just thought, it's time to go alone. And as a faculty member, I got 1 day a week to do my own thing. So 1 day a week, I would see clients. And I had just had my first 2 international coaching gigs. And they went unusually well. And I just thought, I can do this. I can go on my own. I'll give it a try. If it blows up, I'll know in a year, and maybe I'll try and take an academic position again. So I worked very, very hard, and was never looked back.
Bring me to that moment. Okay, the moment that you know that you're onto something that probably right, and that you want to give it a try. Because conversation like this, we want to have to people to decide that when they reach to that moment in their life, then they make that decision to give it a try, and maybe it takes them to somewhere that they always wanted. So how did you feel at that moment that, hey, coaching is something that you wanna do, and you wanna try, and you wanna experience that longer?
I was already doing that kind of work, but only 1 day a week, and typically not even a whole day.
Ah,
I'd been a psychologist during my postdoc. I was at Harvard, and I was stationed at Harvard Business School for part of it, where many of the Harvard Business School students and faculty who would come to me were not there for psychopathology. They weren't there for depression or anxiety or drug abuse. Um, they were there to sort of improve their performance. And so I wasn't trained for that, but I had to learn pretty quickly to use my skills as a psychologist to apply. Like, I'm a goalkeeper and I want to be on the national team. It's like, okay, how do I find a way to help you do that? So it was challenging and very exciting. And I maintained that when I became a faculty member. But it became, I was sort of running into, there was some politics that was sort of a bit of a downer. And I could see I was coming into a bit of a dead end. It wasn't easy, like, did I really want to spend my whole time being teaching faculty? Did I want to go to a business school? Nothing set me alight. And so in this time of really not being sure quite what was next, I sort of looked at my 1 day a week coaching and therapy practice, and I was like, this is working for me. I like this. And I have no idea where it goes. And I don't need it to go anywhere because I don't have clear visions of where I want to be. And I just had a funny feeling like I have enough. If this stinks, I have enough money and enough support from people that I can take this gamble. I can take this risk. If in 6 months' time I haven't made a penny, I won't be on the streets. And I'm like, just take the risk. And yeah, I mean, I was very determined. I worked too hard. I worked a lot, and I didn't need to, but I only knew that afterwards. Because every client I wanted to say yes to, I was, hungry and scared that it would all fail. And but I'm glad I took that gamble. And I wonder now, am I still taking that gamble, or am I staying in the comfort of a familiar path? Am I willing to take the risk that I took in 2013, 2012?
wow. So at the 2012, you look into the 1 day work that you really enjoy doing, and you feel like that is something that you could get into and try to see how it goes after a year or so, right? What did you think that, like in your crazy way of thinking about that, in a year time, what would that business look like, Jonathan?
No idea. No idea. I had when I think about like the transitions in my career, a couple of them have been so bizarre. For example, I was at NTU and I went to NUS because I was poached. But I was poached because I had a random conversation with a random person at just the right time. It was just like I couldn't have designed that conversation that made the change. Like, I was offered a job by the dean of the Lee Kuan Yew School. When I was like, we had like to get an academic job takes a ton of work. It's a lot of hassle. It takes months. And I was trying to sell him a workshop, and he said, "I don't want your workshop. How about you join on faculty?" He said to me, "Your faculty position starts in September." And I laughed. I said, "I'm here to sell you a workshop. I'm not applying for a job." And he said, "Are you turning me down?" And I said, "No." And I said, "But besides, it takes at least 6 months to transfer faculty from one university to another." And he said to me, "Dr. Marshall, are you challenging me?" I was like, "What?" The next thing I know, the president of NTU University received an email copied to Lee Kuan Yew himself, insisting on my immediate release. I was like, "Oh my God, like how is this happening?" That I could not have imagined that suddenly I would be in a different university, which was much more my style, and I stayed for many years. And when it came to transitioning from that university to my own practice, I remember this lovely lady, Beth, called me up and said, Jonathan, I have two coachees I'd like you to work with. And they were in Manila. And I was like, well, that's really kind of you, but I'm based in Singapore. And why would you want me? And he said, because you're smart, because you're male, and because you're a bastard. I was like, okay, Beth, what is this really about? Like, why, and it turns out that she had worked with these people and it hadn't gone well. And so she thought, it was the first time somebody had asked me to do an international piece of work, or a flying, I guess the university had asked me to do international work, but it'd never been a company overseas that had said, come here. And so I was kind of intimidated. I didn't know how to do what I was about to do. And it went so well that, like I remember one of the clients, it was just a remarkable change. And a couple of times in a career, you get such a change, but I just happened to have such a change then. And I thought, you know what? It's worth it. I like this work. But I knew that I really didn't know what I was doing or where I was going. Wow. But I was willing to work hard to do it.
Wow. You know what? During our 1,200 conversations with experts in 100 countries, right? We've found one thing that we really, really enjoy in the amazing people, and you also have in that one, Dr. Jonathan, is this. It's newness. And that's why a couple of months ago, we found a company called helloNEWNESS, because we want to help people with accelerating in change. And instead of like being reactive at change, now being more proactive at change. And that's coming from the mindset of newness. Like you, when Beth came to you and said, hey, you have two coaching clients from different countries, from the Philippines, and even that you didn't know what to do with that. When you ask the question, then you get into the newness, and then you get into that, figure it out, right? Or earlier when you say that the dean asks you to go from one university to the next university, even that's strange, but then you accepting the challenge, you got into that one also. So that is how proactively from your ends to accepting things from uncertainty, then you get in there, you figure it out, right? So if you look at your life, and if you look at the newness, the mindset of dealing with newness in your life, how do you see it affecting into what you do and contributing to the works that you do for other people?
It's a lovely concept that you have. I know of a familiar one, a similar one in a way, maybe I got it wrong. An old supervisor of mine called it planned happenstance. The idea that you can plan and plan and plan is a good thing to do, but it's the luck, it's the random conversation, it's hanging out at the water cooler at just the right time that makes the transition. So, like I couldn't have got the job at NUS if I didn't have all the work of a PhD, but I also wouldn't have had the job if I hadn't had that random spark of luck. So I like this concept very much of you've got to be open to the spark of luck, but it doesn't mean you can, afford to be lazy. There's also the hard work to do. In terms of how newness or planned happenstance has been in my life, I'd say all over the place. My first, after doing my first degree, I was looking for a job, and I had a really hard time with it. And I'm embarrassed to admit that not everybody had email in those days. In fact, not at all. And the phone number on my CV, 2 digits had been transposed. Now, how could I have made such a mistake? I'm not normally so careless. So in those days, if somebody rejected you, they sent you a mail. But if somebody accepted you, they phoned you up and said, can you come for an interview? I didn't get any calls. I was like, what is this? I got a degree from Stanford. It looks pretty, and I was so down about it. And there was this lady who was regularly kind of pestering me to organize an event at Stanford using, my credentials so that she could organize this big event. She was not a Stanford graduate. And I was like, and one night I was just frustrated. It was Friday night. She's calling me again. It's like 10 p.m. And I kind of snapped at her and I said, okay, I'm having trouble getting a job. How about you pay me back by finding me a job? And she said, okay. I had an interview Monday morning, 9 a.m. I had a job on Wednesday. And it's like, who could have done that? And it was a job with the company that created what's now Yahoo Mail. It's like a Gmail alternative. It was before Gmail. And so we created one of the second web-based email. Like it was Hotmail beat us, and then there was what was then called Rocket Mail. And I was in the .com world of like the human, not the mind-body connection, but the mind-body-machine connection. And it was crazy exciting. I mean, this was the beginning of the internet. I was there the first time. You get an email and you see an image in an email. Nobody thinks twice about that, right? Like emails were not that way. They were just text. And like I was there the first time an email showed up, and this guy Chang in our office, everybody, like all 25 of us, like ran to Chang's cube as an image, line by line, was appearing in the body of an email. And I was like, there's this feeling of like, this is a major moment. I know this is big. I don't know how big. I don't know what I'm seeing. But I knew I was seeing something huge. And now, the whole world is image-based online. And attachments, right? We call them attachments. You attach something to an email, it's an attachment.
Yes.
This was like, I think, the first web-based email to have attachments. Or maybe the first email. I'm not sure to have it. No. The first graphical email to have attachments. Anyhow, they were called 2 of 2, or the long name was part 2 of 2. And you're like, I remember saying to the engineers one day, they're playing foosball. I'm like, what is 1 of 2? And they laughed. They thought I was being stupid and trying to like have fun. I'm totally serious. I don't know what 1 of 2 is. And it doesn't make sense to me that when I put a document on an email that it should be called 2 of 2. Like, what does it mean? And they were like, you're being dumb. 1 of 2 is obviously the body of the email. And 2 of 2 is what you add on to the email. And I said to them, we have a competition. If the temp, the secretary that we have in the office knows what 1 of 2 is, I'll be quiet. But if she doesn't know what 1 of 2 is, then you guys got to change the name. And so they loved the idea because Kimmy was super cute and they wanted any excuse to talk to Kimmy. So we all leave the foosballs there. We go to Kimmy and we're like, Kimmy, what is 1 of 2? And she's like, I don't know, but I know 2 of 2 is when you put something on the email. And I was like, guys, you have to change the name. It was the very beginning. It was the beginning. And it was amazing. It was very exciting. And again, like a random phone call from someone who was kind of annoying at the time, at least to me, who was very stressed, and having the guts to tell them what I wanted.
Wow.
I was lucky.
Wow. Wow. You say it's random, and I have to disagree to that. You must have been you must be doing something differently, because put it this way, that lady could call anyone but you, yeah. Right? The dean could reach out to any other doctors but you, right? So the randomness is something that we make it easy to accept in the fact that it happened, but it must be something that Dr. Jonathan has been doing, has been showing, has been making, so that he got attention from other people to say, okay, if I have a faculty position available, this is going to Dr. Jonathan, right? Even him sent that email and asking for immediate release of your duty from the university so you can transfer to the next university. That's rarely happened. And so that must be something that you've been doing in the back every day that get to that opportunity. So what is that you do? What was that you think you do?
I'd say it's a lot of good luck, and if there's something else as well, I think it's possibly that I'll ask.
You ask.
I maybe am more. I'm that much more comfortable asking for what I want, even though I might be rejected for it. Um, so being able to say, and even to myself, to say, actually, what I want is not a faculty position. I want to experiment with doing it on my own, or asking that lady, like, hey, I'm fed up. I want a job, or asking those engineers who are laughing at me, like, hey, what the hell is one of two? It doesn't make sense. To see that, so I think that's possibly been something that I've helped. That's where I've helped luck, perhaps, come to me a bit.
Wow. Is that asking for what you want? Is it something coming naturally to you when you were little, or is that something that you have to learn and get yourself familiar with that?
Maybe because it's so hard for me to know what I want, that when I finally know what I want, I don't want to let it go.
Wow. How did you figure out that you know what you want? When you say finally, until you know what you want, that you don't want to let it go. Teach us what happened that made you know what you want now.
Oh, it's a daily struggle. I mean, sometimes I think about, do I want to relocate from Singapore? Do I want to change my job completely? But the truth is, I love my job. I like being in Singapore. It's not that I'm close to the possibility, but it's something I ask myself. Am I getting closed because I found something comfortable? Am I willing to take a big risk? I took a few big risks, and am I willing to do the same again? Would I, close shop, change country, do something? So I don't know. Maybe I'm becoming more closed and confined because of comfort. I hope not. I mean, I ask myself that question. What is it that I really want? I ask it a lot. And to do that, the best way I have found is to think about death. And
think about
death, yeah. And that can be in a meditative manner. And, in Vietnam has, steeped in Buddhism. And in Buddhism, there's a lot of emphasis on meditating on death. But in contemplating how short life can be, I think the Buddha said that that the speed of a natural death, the fastest speed of a natural death, is the speed it takes you to swallow your own spit, which is about the speed of an aneurysm. Like, we could die in such a tiny amount of time, or we may have many years. And to think about death, to consider the impermanence of life, I think in doing that, life becomes a bit more precious, and my priorities become a little clearer. And so in that, then it becomes a tiny bit easier to work out, what do I really want? What's really important to me? And maybe that decision of, do I take this job or that, doesn't really matter to me. Maybe one will be better than the other, I guess. Maybe it's something else that I'm realizing, I really want to be spending more time with my family, friends, or whatever it might be. So if there were one way, I would say thinking about death. And if there was a second way, I would say concentrating the mind. I spent 3 months in silent meditation 2 years ago. And that was surprising to me, how, as I learned to concentrate my mind, that in its silence, a lot of things just naturally flowed. I would have a sense of preference more quickly. I could identify it more easily. I felt more like the conductor with an orchestra that was in tune. And that the rest of my life, often I feel like the orchestra and the conductor are out of whack, and they're not in tune, and it's a little bit mixed up and messy and full of surprises. But when my mind is concentrated, I feel like a whole lot more is in tune. It's hard to describe. But those would be, I think, the two things: contemplating death and learning to concentrate the mind.
Wow. Because every conversation, I always ask the guests to share about their secret to thinking. You already had me answering that question.
Oh, good.
So I will focus on the other questions. We are running a program that we want to celebrate 2026 with the people around the world. right?
Mhm.
And one thing that we want to share with the people around the world is to share how amazing people in different countries are focusing on something that they want to do in 2026. So if Dr. Jonathan, there's one thing that you want to share with the people that will be your focus in 2026, what would that be so that people can listen, can reference, and maybe they can adopt for what you do, what you want to do into their lives?
One thing that has surprised me is that clinical psychology and executive coaching sound really different. And yet, so many executives, including very senior executives, when they come in to see me for executive coaching, I end up using my clinical background because they have a lot of issues, especially trauma.
Oh,
And I am regularly surprised how much suffering and distress executives carry. Or, I mean, people in the working world generally carry. Um, and so I am excited by the acceptance that's growing, even in senior leadership, around issues around mental health, the importance of taking care of your mental health, and the daring that some of these leaders have to talk about their challenges, which I think helps the rest of their organizations be more accepting, to be more sensitive, to be more tolerant. It helps people feel less alone. And so the suffering that many people are carrying is being relieved because of the daring of the people at the top who are being honest. So I'd say this is where I'm more focused than other areas. Again, there's a sense of not knowing. There's a lot of not knowing for me, but that's my guess. Like 2026 is taking further steps into trying to bring self-awareness and psychological mindedness and healing to people in the urban environment and the CEOs and the CFOs, the senior executives. That seems to be my target audience, but it doesn't have to be.
Dr. Jonathan, for accomplished leaders, right? They really do well at their works. They're really smart pupils. That's why I think they get into that ladder of organizations. So why is that on their path to getting there, they left so many scars on their soul, on their minds that leave them with a lot of traumas like that?
So kind of like, how is it they got there given they had all these traumas along the way kind of
No,
thing?
I mean, like, if they're smart like that, then they get to where they wanted to be in their career ladders. Why along the way didn't they recognize that they've been
Mm.
having scars along the way, that they could, like stop it from the
Yeah.
beginning already, or somewhere along the way already?
Let's put it another way. Perhaps what took them to the top was the scars they carried in the beginning. Not always. So, for example, clients of mine who are in the mental health world, say psychiatrists, other psychologists, counselors, many of them have a core fear of being unlovable. I'm unlovable. And yet they're in a profession where their job is to be loving and kind. Politicians I've worked with, often a core fear has been I'm marginal, like I'm not important. And yet you're in the limelight as a politician. Lawyers, it's often that I'm inadequate. Now, to be a lawyer, you have to do so well academically, at least in the environments I've been in, that how can you say you're inadequate? It's just such a lot of work. And then you go into a law firm where you get pummeled. But so it seems to me that the insecurities, our core insecurities, are things that we spend a lot of the rest of our life on and try and turn into a strength, to compensate. And so many of those people, I think, at the top are people who've been driven by a sense of pain and need, which has taken them there. Now, when I start working with them, many of them say to me, well, heck, if you take away my insecurity, if you take away my sense of, let's say, inadequacy, well, I stop being productive. Maybe I'll just sit there like a blob and I won't work because all of my work, all of my activity is based on fear. I live in fear. And that's why I'm so on the ball. I'm such a good manager. We deliver the best product in the market because of the fear in me. And I get it. I mean, you following what I'm saying? Like if
Yes.
I cure the fear, well, then what's going to drive them? And I think it's a reasonable concern. And what I tend to find is it is true that as that underlying anxiety is relieved, there may be a decrease in sort of frenetic work, that sort of 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. kind of schedule. But then it often picks up again as creativity and more of a sense of flow kicks in. Mm. And so the leader who was, I've got 24 appointments a day, I got to do this, I got to, like, pop, sort of is more likely to become the one who steps back and goes, hey, you know what? I think we need to totally change our strategy. And it's like, where did you get that idea from? It's like, well, I've just been reflecting. Whereas before, they might not have had the time to reflect. Now, it's not guaranteed that if they go through this process that they will access more creativity and presence and reflective ability. But that seems to be what I find, that the manic need to achieve and to do the next task may go down, but what seems to eventually sort of take over is more of a sense of well-being, of ease, of vision, creativity.
So that could lead to something more sustainable in the future also, right?
Hopefully it brings some more well-being. But there, more well-being for them, more well-being for their staff, and hopefully a more wholesome organization.
And Dr. Jonathan, 2 months ago, my wife and I acquired a website. So I bring you to the .com.
Yeah.
And we acquired the website called sustainabilitymind.com. And because we think like the work that you do, you help people to be more sustainable at what they do in terms of the performing, in terms of the well-being, so that they can create something that's sustainable for their organization, for their people, and for the communities that they serve also. So, and we want to bring, like collective wisdom about the people when they think about a sustainability mind. That is something that when we have it in here, then daily that we can do, we can act accordingly, right? So in your own definition of a sustainability mind, what is that to you?
To me, so I think very much in the micro, the individual, the depths of your mind, the dark places in you. And so and most of us are significantly driven by fear. And I think a more wholesome way, and sustainability maybe is the right word, is when we can heal those wounds that drive the fear. Mm-hmm. And that I think makes the whole person more whole. And then their ideas and what they may do may be more effective as well. They'll be less inclined to, I'm sure if many leaders had been more whole in themselves, several wars would never have happened. That we often act out externally the fears we have internally. And so healing those, I think, is key. So in terms of sustainability, which in my mind often has a kind of environmental perspective, that key to it is the human mind. And if our minds are more healed, then our environments will be less destroyed. We project outwards into the world and create the world around us, often that reflects the inner experience of my mind. So, think of a leader who, say, is very hostile externally and boisterous and harsh and erratic and difficult and ruins relationships with other countries. Well, in the depths of their mind is probably a lot of turmoil. And if you could decrease that turmoil, I think you would create a more sustainable world.
Wow, how beautiful. I have 2 last questions for this conversation. Okay. Sure. And you've been meeting a lot of amazing people, working with a lot of amazing leaders. And of course, they have a lot of skills and strength that helping them to get there. And in the age of AI that we are facing, where we are having at the moment, if you can think of a skill that any of us should be focusing in the future so that we can be, accelerate our life, our work, our, like things like that. So if it boiled down, just one thing that Dr. Jonathan want people to focus and master, what would that skill be?
Well, I would choose 3, but if I could only choose one, it would be learn to listen.
What is that?
And
learn to listen.
Learn to listen. And I know that sounds trite. People go, oh yeah, I know how to listen. Really, like it's like the number of marriages that don't work because nobody learned to really listen and to listen well. And I'd say that for me absolutely would be very valuable. And I'd say if you gave me a second one, it would be learn to be silent, which in some ways learn to listen to yourself. So learn to listen to others, learn to listen to yourself would be the second. And if I had a third, it would be how to cultivate kindness. And again, you know, the Buddhists and Hindus have whole practices around how you do that. But it's very hard to be silent if you can't be kind. If you have kindness inside, it's easier to be with yourself. It's easier to listen to other people. It's very hard to give a damn about anybody else if inside you're in turmoil and in pain and there isn't the kindness for yourself there.
Wow. Thank you. I asked one, I got three. So the last question, and this time we're going to travel to meet one person in your life. Okay. So you said that your mother was driving a white Ford, white Jeep, right? In
That's
Malaya?
right.
Where's Malaya?
Yeah. So it was before Malaysia, so it was called Malaya, and so this was the jungles of Pahang.
So back then, were you there or just
No.
she was? No.
I wasn't even born.
Okay. Now we're gonna meet her. All right.
Okay.
So you, me, we stop her car.
Okay.
You're gonna tell her that this is Dr. Jonathan. And I am your son. All right. You are going to tell your mother about the future that you are working on, you are doing, and the things, anything that you can tell her back then. What would you tell her?
I think I'd say there's going to be an awful lot of change, and continue to have the courage to do what you want. I think as an English white woman in Southeast Asia, there were a lot of cultural constraints, a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts that she didn't know how to handle, and she tried to do the right thing. And it's quite tiring and anxiety provoking to be outside your culture, especially when it feels kind of restraining. And I think that probably caused her a lot of stress, this sort of desire to do what other people wanted, to please people, to do the right thing by society. And so I think if I went back in time as an adult and spoke to her, I would say I would encourage her to do what she really wants, to find her own sense of purpose, passion, and direction, and not to care too much about what society would think.
You brought some tears in my eyes. So, Dr. Jonathan, thank you so much for a beautiful conversation. And we traveled time. We had a lot of, different moments in the conversation. And I really love what you share, all the insight, all the wisdom, on the story you shared here. And I want to say thank you for sharing your story with us. Okay. And I really look forward to a day that we're going to meet one another, and that would be wonderful for me to give you a big hug and in person.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. I look forward to be it in Singapore or Vietnam or someplace along the way.
Thank you very much. You have a beautiful evening, and
thank you.
People I say hello from Vietnam also. Okay.
I will. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye,